So, following up on the Ricardo Montalban noir train, tonight's noir was 1949's Border Incident, which was actually obviously made a year before Mystery Street and was his first lead role. It was directed by Anthony Mann and shot by John Alton, so it was beautiful. And it co starred George Murphy. So, the story is set in the border between California and Mexico. And Ricardo Montalban is a Mexican police officer. George Murphy is an American police officer. Together, they're working to figure out who, of many, but one person who is smuggling illegal immigrants in to work on the farms. Now, what's interesting about the film to me and watching it in 2016 is that it's very sympathetic to the workers and to the reasons that maybe they would turn to being smuggled into the country, and really vilifies the people who are profiting off of, one, the need for workers, and two, the desperate workers who want to get across one way or another. Because they show people waiting 6 weeks and more just trying to get this job, and then they really discuss the need for Mexican farm workers on these American farms. Now, I say it's interesting to watch this in 2016. I was listening to NPR a couple weeks ago, and they were talking to farmers in Washington who do have apple farms, because they call them apple farm orchards. There we go. And there was this one guy, he was 85 or something, and he'd been working on the same apple farm for 30 plus years or whatever, and still goes back to Mexico on the off season. And his children, his son came with him, and his son works on the farm but has become a naturalized citizen and then has had children there, and then his children have had children, so he's a great grandkid at this point. And I found that very interesting. But the other half of the piece on NPR was talking about how during the recession, these food ranches and orchards and stuff, the ranches and orchards and farms and orchards and things had an influx of American workers trying to get jobs because there were no jobs, right? It was the recession. And these most American workers couldn't last a day. They would stay maybe a week, and then be like, fuck, this is too hard. And they would rather not have a job than work that hard. And it was a big, light shining of this is hard work, and the only people who will come and do it are these migrant farm workers who work really fucking hard to basically feed everybody, and they've been given a lot of shit. And so even today, they're still getting a lot of shit, and how expensive it is to bring people over to work the seasons. And this is a problem we're still having in 2016, right? And this was a problem they were having in 1949. 1949. So it's interesting to see that we really haven't figured this shit out in between the two countries in 60 years. Almost 70 years, and we're still trying to make this work. What? So I found that really fascinating, and definitely if you're following along, that you should. This is an interesting film to watch. It's definitely stylized, sort of, with the beautiful cinematography from John Alton, and you get some really harrowing moments. I'm not gonna say who, but someone gets run over by a tractor, and it's really fucking terrifying. And you get a little bit in Mexicali, and you get a little bit on a ranch and a farm. I keep saying ranch. I grew up in a ranching community, so that's what I keep thinking. Farm. And unfortunately, so most of the extras who do not speak are actually played by Mexicans or Mexican Americans. A handful of the characters who do speak are played by Mexican or Mexican Americans, including Ricardo Montalban. However, most of the people who were Mexican were in brown face, and I was just like, and it also made me like real pissed all over again about the third man, because that was not Orson Welles. Orson Welles did not want to put Charlton Heston in brown face. He's real pissed about that. He wanted to cast an actual Mexican person to play that character, and it makes me just wonder if Ricardo Montalban had played that role, like that would have been really wonderful, because he's a great actor, but also the camera sure loves his face. He's got so many good angles, and like every angle he was shot from, he was just like a fashion magazine spread. He's just beautiful. So if you find Ricardo Montalban beautiful, this is a good film for you, because he's not bad to look at. Anyways, I just thought this is a fascinating film. It's kind of a little bit of a Western. It's mostly a noir. It's a crime picture. There's, a femme fatale kind of towards the end. She doesn't really get to do much. A lot of bad guys. Charles McGraw is in it for a little bit. This is early Charles McGraw. He's like listed way down on the cast list, but he steals every scene he's in because he's Charles McGraw. And he's about to have his big breakthrough. The next year, I think, is his big. I mean, he was in a bunch of things. Well, okay, he was in The Killers before this, but I'm thinking, what film am I thinking of? Oh, he's in T-Men, too. He's good in T-Men. Side Street. Now I'm just looking at all. Armored Car Robbery was the one I was thinking of. That's 1950. He's so good in Armored Car Robbery. He's good in everything, though, What was the other one I was thinking of? Charles McGraw. Narrow Margin, 52. So anyways, my point being, this is a fascinating film because we're still dealing with a lot of these issues. And so it's an immigration noir. And the fact that they, other than the fact that they can't figure out how to cast actual freaking Mexican people as Mexican people, it's very sympathetic towards why people come across the border illegally. And there's a scene where they really talk about, because it's vilifying, like I said, it's vilifying the people who are profiting, the smugglers, basically, because it's human trafficking that's happening, and they're very much vilifying the human traffickers, and they're showing like, if they were able to get one of the jobs that takes forever to wait for and come across legally, they were going to get paid 75 cents an hour. They're getting paid 25 cents an hour because they're illegally, right? Then they're getting their food docked. Then the Charles McGraw characters shafting them and taking their money also, and so in the end, they're making less money working illegally in the country than they would have been making if they were still in Mexico. And it just shows, but the farms are profiting because they have workers, and so it shows sort of how fucked that system is, and how it's those middlemen that are really the villains. And I thought that was great. So this is Anthony Mann's Border Incident. This is from 1949. It's fascinating to think about, and you should definitely check it out. I rented it from, I don't have the thing with me, I left it in the other room, but I rented it from Videodrome here in Atlanta. It's the last movie rental store in Atlanta that is not a porno rental store, and it's very good. They actually have an Anthony Mann section. You can just go straight to it. 1949's Border Incident.